Okay. Thank you for that, Andy. 1-877-LIVE-675 is our number, 1-877-548-3675. Let me go to Ohio, where Scott joins us. Scott, thank you for being with us. Your comment or question?
Hi, Jan. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Hello, sir.
How are you, sir?
Real good. I just want to comment. I think the thing today is it's like a battle for words, and you have to bring up the scripture. Like the Islamic faith uses the Pentateuch. They have the Old Testament, and the Jewish faith has the Old Testament. You have to find the commonalities of the scripture and bring them. We have to come to the law of love. To understand love, there's no law against love. So what I'm saying is, like Isaiah 1:18 says, "Come, let's reason together." We don't want to confront or go around we're going to throw a net over you. I mean, we turned the whole country into everybody's on a cell phone. The churches are everyone wants to catch you. We have to slow down and talk to one another and have a sandwich. Come and have a sandwich. Hey, what's going on? What do you believe? Talk about your faith. And when you find that common ground, like Christ did, you accepted. He talked to the common people. He wasn't trying to overthrow Rome. That's the big debate. We have to overthrow the government. Christ never did that. Did he? Did you see that? He never tried to overthrow Rome. He never did.
Okay, Scott, let me ask a question as a follow-up to Andy, if I think I'm understanding your point, and that is, if you're going to come and reason together, and you made that reference in Scripture, which is a great one, the presumption is both people have the same desire. Andy, therein lies the problem. I'm not interested in forcing anyone to convert to Christianity, and if they don't, I have the right to kill them according to my scriptures, the Quran, if I were a Muslim.
Right.
And yet, if you're going to have peace, the presumption is both parties want peace. I'm reading from your book, Surah 533, the punishment of those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger and strive with might and main for mischief through the land is execution or crucifixion, or the cutting off of hands and feet from opposite sides, or exile from the land. That is their disgrace in this world, and a heavy punishment is theirs in the hereafter. I'm not quite sure I can reason with that, Andy.
Well, no, and I think in response to the caller's point, of course we always want to be open to dialogue, and I don't want to turn this into a Christianity versus Islam thing, because I don't think that's fruitful. But you can communicate with evil without compromising with evil, and when in order to find common ground, this passion to find common ground and consensus. All I can say about that is that when good compromises with evil, that's a big victory for evil, because you can't compromise without accepting things that are unacceptable. And I think as a people, we have to understand where our red lines are, so to speak. I'm all for dialogue. I'm all for being able to try to understand the other side. This book, I hope, is an attempt to try to explain what I think I understand about the other side, and I'm not unwilling to be shown that I'm wrong about things, and I don't think we should ever feel that way. But we can't compromise on the big things, and we can't become something that we're not just in order to get along. I think that's suicidal.
And I also think, Andy, we have to draw a distinction between the rules of deportment for us as individuals versus the role of a government, particularly when it comes to the area of national security and defense. And that really is the point that you take in this book. So my question to you is, we watch with great sadness as Sharia law becomes more and more entrenched in Great Britain. When even the Archbishop of Canterbury says we have to make some accounting for Sharia law, it's basically here to stay. I think many in the United States probably listened to him and thought, well, that could never happen here in the United States. We have the Declaration of Independence, we have our Constitution, we have the Bill of Rights. It couldn't possibly happen. And yet, you point out in your book that we're starting to see pockets all over this country where Sharia law creates this sort of Islamic zone of jurisprudence. Am I right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when we have these accommodations, Janet, I think it's really important, and I hope the book makes this point effectively, to understand what each side relatively is trying to accomplish. When we say, let's make room for some provisions of Sharia in our law, that sounds harmless enough. It even sounds admirable. We can say, sure, why shouldn't they be able to participate in our financial markets? So let's create an industry of Sharia-compliant finance. And why not have, foot baths in bathrooms and public areas, and Muslim only and women only or men only swimming hours in what otherwise would be public swimming places and that sort of thing. We make these accommodations and we say, see, we're being reasonable. But the other side, the Islamists, they want the accommodations not so that we can have one big ecumenical society. They want these accommodations because they see Sharia as a whole that is indivisible, and what they're trying to accomplish is to slowly get it legitimized with the ultimate view toward having it fully installed. They're not looking to take a piece here or a piece there. They want the whole enchilada, as they say. And when we accommodate Sharia, we have to do it with an understanding that, number one, there are provisions of Sharia which are absolutely antithetical to American Republican constitutionalism. I'm sorry.
No, Andy, in fact, the music says I have to take a break, but inherent in what you're saying is an intimation about First Amendment and also church-state establishment issues. I want to talk about the State Department and a mosque in Northern Virginia when we come back. Andy McCarthy is with us. His new book, hot off the presses, is called The Grand Jihad. More with Andy right after this.
It is unfair that you enjoy a safe life while our brothers in Gaza suffer greatly. Therefore, with God's will, our attacks on you will continue as long as you continue to support Israel. Peace be upon those who follow the light of guidance.
Osama bin Laden speaking through a translator, emblematic of what this global movement really represents. Andy McCarthy is with us. He's a senior fellow at the National Review Institute and a contributing editor at National Review. He's the author of Willful Blindness. He's also co-chair of the Center for Law and Counterterrorism, which is a joint project of the National Review Institute and the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. If you go to In the Market with janetparshall.org, you will see the book Andy and I are discussing this hour. It is called The Grand Jihad, and it is well worth the read. It lets us know that there is a movement afoot to try to implement, under divine direction, a globalist system of Islamism, and I challenge you to read the book. It's a great read. Church-state separation. You know, I don't mind in the marketplace of ideas, Andy, if somebody decides that they're going to set up shop in front of a booth that contains the ideas found in the Quran. I believe in religious liberty. Shut down their booth, and the booth called Christianity will be shut down. So I want the opportunity for people to be able to choose for themselves. I personally happen to believe there are good and bad ideas. Bad ideas fall into their own weight. Good ideas will stand forever, eternally, more to the point. So when we get a church-state entanglement issue, here's where I take umbrage with the government. If you're going to accommodate, an important word when it comes to religious liberty, one religion, you're not being even-handed if you refuse to accommodate another. I point to the Mojave Cross decision as a classic example of that. Now we've got the State Department promoting an Islamist Virginia mosque. How can they do that without hitting the tripwire of the Establishment Clause?
Well, I don't know that they can. But, of course, someone has to challenge them on that, and no one seems to be too anxious to do that. But you're quite right. They have promoted the Dar al-Hijra Mosque in Northern Virginia as an example, as they put it, a prime example of Muslim life in America. And I think it's aside from the church-state legal issue, which is obviously a profound one, it's a very sorry choice in terms of just judgment, because this mosque turns out to be very far from a moderate mosque, one of the more hair-raising mosques in modern American history. It was frequented by